Welcome to Culmination, where we're not experts, but we sure have a lot to say. In the process of becoming our best self, I have with me the aspiring meteorologist James Zinnbauer to discuss introversion. So without further ado, let's get started. My first question for you, James, is how would you define introversion?
So I have a very rudimentary way of defining it, but for me, it tends to usually it tends to be around if, like, say you're in a crowd and like maybe it's even a party, and do you walk out of it feeling energized and ready to keep on going, or are you drained and need to take a breather? Usually, like it's a bit more like complicated than that, but that's like
Yeah.
the basics of it. So basically, it's introversion versus extroversion. Introversion's more when you like keeping to yourself a little bit. You don't like huge crowds. You
Mhm.
can get overwhelmed in large places and cases like that. So
Yeah.
honestly, it's just it's really just more of your levels of energy being around groups of people. That's how I
Right.
usually do it.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty accurate to the definition. I haven't looked it up, like, or I don't have it memorized on the top of my head, but it's essentially just energy levels. So, like you said, like, do you get your energy around small groups or just being alone, or do you just feel fueled by these parties or large gatherings? So, where do you think you fall under that?
I am definitely introverted. Well, he wouldn't have called me on for this if I was anything but introverted.
That is very true.
Yeah,
but like, show me, like, paint me a picture of when you enter the party. Like, you show up. I'm like, hey James, come to my party. It's gonna be bonkers. Like, let's have a good time. Paint me a picture.
Yeah, if you held a party like that, well, first off, it would depend how large it is.
Uh-huh.
So, if it's a small party with like groups of people that I know and like a lot, I'll probably be more energetic and more willing to intersperse throughout those groups of people. If it's a really big crowd, like overwhelmingly large, I'll probably stay at the fringes, talk to maybe one or two people, and I might even end up leaving before the thing is really over.
Sorry, I got a fever, guys. I gotta.
Yeah, there's many excuses.
Yeah, I mean that's basically homecoming in a nutshell.
Yeah, because I was with you and Ham and Claire, and really we just talked the whole time, didn't do much.
Right.
And that's what I liked about homecoming. But
I mean, the things that I like about parties, not that I'm really a party guy, but it's always a race to sit down immediately. Or like stand in the corner with the people you actually want to talk to.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, because it's just like, you show up to a party like homecoming or prom, and it's just like all these people who don't know how to dance, so they just cluster up in the middle, like where the DJ is on the dance floor, and they're just like jumping up and down to horrible music, like vile music that somebody recorded on a MacBook. Like, just no heart or soul, just bad.
Yeah, well, one thing that's sometimes a common thing to think about is that it's not being extroverted or introverted. It's not a competition. Like, if you're introverted, you are by no means better than extroverts. And the flip side, if you're an extrovert, you're no better than introverts. It's just really something how we deal with our personalities like that.
And I mean, you can have moments, like, you can do something risky or as in like something very social or out there.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's not it's not a set blank slate where you can't do anything.
I mean, granted, if you do that, you're probably going to feel exhausted afterwards, but
Yeah, but you still would have fun.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the case where if you're an introvert, you never ever will have a fun in a party ever.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And in fact, you probably will have fun if it's with the people you want to be with, and and even if it's a big crowd, it's just that at the end of it, you might be feeling very, very drained, and you don't feel like you can keep on going.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but like when you're with people that you are close with or whatnot, you almost feel fueled as if it was that extrovert sensation.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, because that's how I keep going, like on weekends, since we game every night until like 3. But those are the people I want to be with. It's a small group, and those are the people I trust, and that's what keeps me going into the early morning hours.
And really, just it's not that introverts don't like having friends or are very isolated. I mean, sometimes they're more isolated, or there are people who are. But it's really just about having probably like less, but more important, more close connections.
Yeah.
More intimate, if you will. Let me see. What we were kind of talking about, how it's like you can end up doing something that you could consider extroverted. I feel like with me, the way I kind of work is kind of weird, because I'm like, I don't want to say ambivert, because I don't know if that's really a thing or not. I mean, I see it's a thing, but I also see that it's not really a thing. But it's like I'm basically going through waves or chains. Like, I can go a solid week talking to like tons of people about tons of different things, calling them up and having a discussion, or meeting up with them. I mean, granted, I meet up with them one-on-one, but just like different people each time. But then I have to go a week afterwards where I'm just like, I don't want to do anything, and I don't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
But it's just like, it's weird because I have those waves where I can do either or.
Yeah. And honestly, it's not the case where everyone is very different with how they handle this introversion. It's not like it's like a set characteristic. It's very different for everybody. So some people, when they're introverted, may not want to talk with anyone at all, which is antisocial, or asocial. I might have mixed up those two, but or some can handle or even border on the line of introversion and extroversion. It's really, to put it crudely, a spectrum.
By the way, I think it is asocial, because antisocial is like set habits that kind of points to psychopathy.
Okay.
So it's asocial.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got that.
Were you saying something else?
No, I just finished up my spectrum talk.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Let me see. One of the questions I wrote down for you is, we already kind of like discussed how you're an introvert and kind of how that is, but how does it affect you in your life personally? Like, how does your life kind of like branch out from that base of introversion?
Well, obviously, I am more reluctant to attend big social events, but given the circumstances right now, it's not like I'm going to be doing a whole lot of that anyway.
Right.
Usually, I have very, very close-knit friends, although that is not something that is unique to me, and it's not saying that all introverts will only have very close friends.
Yeah.
But at least for me alone, I usually have a small group of people I genuinely care about a whole lot. And then just in the way I interact with people, I'm usually pretty quiet with strangers. Don't really want to talk to anyone who I don't really know. So like, if I'm asking for help at like customer service, I'm like, yeah, I'm not having a good time. But if I'm talking at like 1 a.m. with my friends, I'll be all funny, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny man, funny boy.
Yeah. And so definitely it's some level of me really not wanting to interact with a whole lot of strangers, just because I find that very awkward and uncomfortable. But obviously it's a skill you should have, so I should keep trying to at least do some of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to, like, you are born with a base temperament, born with base energy levels, like extroverted or introversion, somewhere on the spectrum. But it's always good, at least I think, that if you're an introvert, you need to learn some of the extroverted traits that may be your weakness, and vice versa, just to become kind of well-rounded.
It also helps you just interact with different groups of people a lot better.
Right.
And it's also not to say that you can't improve, because I'm sure there are some people out there who are born sort of extroverted and have shifted introverted, or even the opposite. So it's a changing thing the more you grow and develop.
Which is kind of interesting of itself. How do you think that changes?
Probably with your experiences and interactions. Say, like, you think you're an introvert, but maybe you have a passion for theater, and you get into it, and wow, theater is like, I would honestly say theater is more of an extrovert club.
Yeah.
And you could end up getting a lot more practice with that kind of stuff, and feeling more extroverted. Did I say introverted club? I meant extroverted club.
I think you said extroverted.
Okay. Well, whatever it was, I'll set the record. Theater, in my opinion, is more of an extrovert's theme. So, say that kind of person didn't really want to talk a whole lot, but with their experiences in that specific group, they start to feel a lot more comfortable doing stuff like that. Or the opposite, say an extrovert, maybe it just starts feeling more and more drained, naturally even, and even as they grow and experience different types of groups. Maybe they feel more quiet, and maybe they feel more drained by the end of stuff like that. It's honestly just a shift that can change throughout the majority of your life. So it's an ever-changing thing. So it's good to be able to grapple with different types of groups and different places should you start to feel differently.
I would say we're talking about theater, it's like introverts can do it. Like, it doesn't necessarily
definitely
imply that like you have to be an extrovert. But I feel like one of the biggest turnoffs, like, we've kind of defined it based on energy, but I think there are some set kind of traits that spawns from that. And what I mean by that will be explained here. Like, an introvert might be turned off by the idea of theater or like a drama club or something, because it's all about acting and kind of taking upon almost an ingenuous role. Not ingenuous as in like fake, but I mean, you're acting as a character. Some people get into character, and that's why they like it. That's most of the appeal. But I feel like introverts are much more like, they care about meaningful things on a deeper level, while extroverts usually kind of like, not all of them, of course, keep in mind, but all in all, they're fine with more simpler things, kind of like how they like small talk more than introverts. Like, introverts want like more meat to their conversations, but small talk is just easier in general. But with theater, it's like, I mean, this is kind of just my opinion, just thinking about it from the way I view it. Like, it might be hard to get on stage to act like something you're not, even if you get into character. Not to mention the fact that like you're dealing with people all the time, and eventually will put a show on in front of like hundreds of people. Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
There's definitely a link to be found there. I'm not sure if it's entirely true or not, because well, I simply don't have enough research into that kind of behavior to really make a connection. But that's not a bad point.
I'm mostly just spitballing, but yeah.
And so there definitely could be a connection made there, and that might be something I would like to figure out later. But for the moment, it's really not something. It's not like it's something you're constantly grappling with. It's just something that is, you know. Like,
what do you mean?
I have food allergies. I was born with that. But sometimes people will always talk to me like, "Oh, isn't it like so awful that you have to be conscious of this the whole time?" I'm like, "Well, not really. I'm actually, I've lived with it my whole life, so so it doesn't affect me. Nothing's different. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So I don't have to treat it differently.
That's a very good point, because it's like, how can, like, if you were to feel bad about it, that was if, or you only would if you had experiences of not having that, but because you've been born with it as a constant, it's like, what's the difference, you know?
Yeah. Now, there can be a difference should you just, like, you start to change in that field. Like, that could be something where you really do start to feel more extroverted, but it's still the case where it's a gradual enough change that it really just starts to be the norm for you. You don't feel any different. You don't feel pity or like overwhelming like ability to grapple with this kind of stuff, because it's really not life changing. It's in the basis of it is just how you interact with people.
Right.
So it's not some life changing crazy event that you're gonna have to constantly stress about. And even the link between that and allergies is a far more pressing thing that of course you do have to be mindful about, but it's upon the same level of really, how much do I care about this?
Mm-hmm.
And really, if it's something that's just a kind of a background feature, hardly anything that really takes front and center like an allergy.
Yeah.
It's just what it is. There's really nothing more to it.
Yeah, and I mean, when people change, it might just be their basic, like, development as who they are, like, in their character.
Definitely.
And it's like, it's one of those things where you're an extrovert who turns more introverted. You're not going to be like, oh God, it's happening. All of my energy is filtering out. I'm becoming a loner. No, it's just huh, I guess I'm a bit more introverted now.
Yeah. I remember, I'm not one to really like buy too heavily into personality tests, but of course they are interesting and fun to kind of think about.
Yeah.
I remember I took the test before, I think 8th grade once, and then I took it about a couple months ago. And
which one, Myers-Briggs?
Yeah, Myers-Briggs, or 16 personalities.
Yes.
Yeah. So I took that one, and I have become more introverted over time. So there it does definitely change. It's not something that will be a constant throughout your whole life. So it will wane and grow, and really it's just something that you deal with.
You
and
never know what you miss until it's gone, Sonny.
It's not even like a bad kind of deal. It's really just, this is how I talk. This is what I do.
First they take my money, then they take my energy levels. No.
Yeah. So it's just something that is, to put it in very basic terms.
Right. So speaking of that, kind of how you compared your test scores, you told me before we started recording that you looked into things. Well, first of all, you wrote a paper on this topic, which was one of the inspirations for me to get you on here. And you had to do some research for that. So do you want to tell the class what you learned?
All right. So I'll talk a little bit about this. So my research paper was over how introverts and extroverts are handling the pandemic and the quarantine differently. Mm-hmm. And so just off the top of your head, if you were to think about it, obviously you would probably say, oh, extroverts are handling it worse, introverts are handling it better. Mm-hmm. Right? That's like the base opinion. Yeah. But it's a bit deeper than that. So I'll see if I can pull it up real quick. But the basics of what I researched, it's a different polling group too, because part of mine was research just on my own, and then part of it was also talking to people. I talked to a lot of different students, and took a survey for that. So if I could find it real quick, but seems you would probably think, this is all going to be, extroverts are, since they need more people to talk with, they're going to be like, oh yeah, a pandemic's a whole lot worse, and introverts, because they don't want to talk to people or whatever. I'm making what's the term? Stereotypes? Yeah, I'm making
Yeah,
I'm making a bunch of
yeah.
stereotypes about it.
Um,
Yeah, that's what you think that would be. Oh, I found it. All right.
All right, wonderful.
Yeah, it's called autoethnography. um, so yeah, I will say with my experiences up front, I have really handled this pandemic pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's partially due to my own preference in like groups and stuff, but it's also due just because I developed a lot more skills to plan. So you
Right.
can handle it. It's not necessarily so linear as just say extroverts and introverts, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, and
So
everyone's different too.
yeah, there's a lot of different factors that go into this kind of stuff, but I would say some of it has to do with how I've handled introversion and that stuff like that because I'm actually, since we do video calls now instead of actual hangouts in person, I actually like that a lot more because I could do whatever, just take my phone with me. I don't need to sit down and
Like use the bathroom.
yeah, like, and we'll just take a pee on call. And you know what? That's funny.
You know, I'm. He's probably gonna be the next guest for the next episode, so I bet he's gonna be really glad that you just revealed that information. But then again, he's kind of the person that would admit that himself. So
yeah, yeah. So no harm in that. And maybe if he doesn't like, we'll just cut it. But
we're not
my
cutting. All right, guys, we're back. Sorry, we had a little malfunction there, so we're back. So, as an edit here, James is talking about data he found about introverts versus extroverts during the pandemic. Our audio was cut.
Sound due to their like optimism and resilience, and introverts may have a bit more difficulty with that kind of stuff. So it's definitely an interesting claim, and again, it's very broad and basic, so obviously it does not apply to everyone. So that was an interesting piece of research that I got, but really it just helped me understand more that it's not so black and white as everyone thinks it is. So then what I ended up doing, I created a survey for a lot of students in our grade, and I had them fill it out and answer one of four choices. So during the pandemic, they feel introverted and improved, introverted and worsened, or extroverted improved and extroverted or worsened. So about 54% answered that they were introverted. The other 46% answered they were extroverted. And a lot of people with the introverteds, at least, it was split halfway between introverted and improved and introverted and worsened, like legitimately halfway. And then extroverted, the majority said they are worsened. So that was just with my student body, though. But from that, we can tell that a lot of people who are extroverted feel not so great, but people who are introverted are feeling either good or bad. So
yeah,
it's very split like that.
yeah, just trying to think of what's next. Another one of my questions for you is, what do you think, like based on your experiences, of course, because we can't really draw it from anywhere else, but what do you think the pros and cons of being an extrovert is? Like for you personally.
For an extrovert, or do you mean introvert?
Introvert, like just strengths and weaknesses that you have.
Well, I would say one of my glaring weaknesses is my extreme discomfort in asking for help from strangers, because like that's important, and I can't do it that well. Just because I have such an immense distaste towards it.
What scares you about it?
I don't know. It's just like the prospect of me going up to someone random and asking them, like, it sounds like super easy on paper, and I'm sure a lot of people can do it really well. But for me, I'm just like, nah, I'm gonna find every way possible to not ask this man for help.
Would you get someone else to ask them?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Continue.
But yeah, that's a definite weakness I have. I'm not sure if this relates specifically, or oh, sorry, I'm yawning. Cut that out. But another weakness I've got is that I'm quite stubborn when it comes to wanting to do stuff outside or not, but that might just be a byproduct of other personality traits.
Yeah,
I also
I
am
stubbornness is...
Yeah. I want to be as inconspicuous in crowds as possible, so I don't do anything that would make me stand out, and I don't want people around me doing things that would make us stand out. So I can get really picky about that kind of stuff.
You'll have to send me the homecoming picture to put in the video.
Which one? The me standing alone?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That is a good one. Anything else?
Well, in terms of strengths, at least, I have a lot more abilities to be entertained by myself. Like, I know there's some, like, even my sister gets really antsy if she's just in the house for, like, a day. She always needs to be going out. But I can probably be in the house for days on end and not get bored or antsy or need to go out. Which is a strength and a weakness. Because a weakness, it can lead to some bad patterns and behavior, but I haven't run into any issues with that just yet. And I hope I don't. But in terms of strengths, I don't demand a whole lot from my people around me.
What do you mean?
Well, Julia doesn't drive. So she always needs someone to ferry her around, and that can get complicated with everyone trying to balance their schedules around her. Which is, I mean, she's extroverted, so she needs that kind of stuff. But I usually don't demand a whole lot from everyone, including like my friends or my family. So
I mean, you also just don't need to go out much because of
that. Yeah. So it's nice. It relieves some stress and tension.
A weird question. Would you consider her to be a foil to you?
Oh yeah, definitely. In fact, we really it's a funny thing. Living with her, we've always kind of operated on this like seesaw. So if she's super energetic and bouncing around the house and is like peak energy, I am at my lowest. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to be talked to. I just want to be alone.
Damn.
But on the flip side, if I'm at my peak energy, which isn't like near the levels of her, but at peak for me, she's usually at her lowest. She doesn't want to be talked to. She doesn't really want to do anything with anyone. So yeah, we definitely operate. That's weird. Yeah.
Why do you think that happens?
I have no idea. It's probably just us living together, you know?
Yeah, the sibling like annoyances.
Yeah, we are definitely on opposite sides of ourselves, or of the spectrums, you know.
Where do you think you fall similar to her?
Well, we usually reach a nice balance point on rare occasions, but it's like usually when we're both kind of in this chill mental zone, we're somewhat wanting to talk to other people, but we're not like at like super high levels that can make each other feel upset or annoyed. And usually when we hit that nice equilibrium, it's for a short while, but we get along pretty well and have nice conversations then. But it is rare.
Huh. Yeah, it is just interesting because she is kind of like a counterpart in that regard. Granted, I don't know her as well as you do. But then there's Sam, who's a close friend of yours, who isn't on the show yet. But like I said earlier, if that part didn't get cut out, I'm going to have him on the show next to talk about extroversion. And I'm going to ask him kind of how your dynamic kind of fits together with you two being sort of counterparts. Off camera, we kind of talked about how he's not really like the apex, like the peak extrovert, but still he's pretty outgoing in that regard and gets his energy from people. I'll definitely ask that from his side, but I want to ask you now before we do that, like why do you think it works out with him, in that regard, that specific thing?
Well, it doesn't. Well, first off, we're not living together.
Not yet.
But yeah, first off, we don't have to spend every waking hours with each other. We're able to have space in between when we want to talk and be with each other.
And that affects the energy levels, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And probably when I want to talk with him, it's probably when I'm feeling a bit more energetic.
Okay.
And I got more, more desire to talk and interact.
Yeah.
And him, usually, I don't know if he switches between those kinds of phases as often. I can't speak for him. But I know at least when we talk, he'll be at mid upper energy levels, which then I guess it encourages me just a little bit to have more fun. And since
why doesn't that tire you? Is my question.
Well, it's usually the thing where, again, I'm talking with someone for a short period of time, or just for a couple hours. By the end of it, when I hang up, I'll probably be tired. I don't really want to do a whole lot. But while I'm there, it's with someone I really want to be around, and that gives me a bit more energy to play off of him.
Or I mean, also you're just close with him, and that close connection kind of breaks the boundary a little bit between introversion and extroversion.
Yeah.
So you might not be as affected just because you know him on a more personal level.
Yeah.
But even just how do you get into that is the question. It's we know now that you work well together because you're close friends, but when that came to be, it's there was that boundary, was there?
A little bit. I usually make my friends from other people. I don't usually go out of my way to talk to a stranger and be like, "Hey, want to be my friend?"
You're not like Spider-Man 3 out here.
No. But yeah, it's the case where I met Ham from another friend. We like each other a whole lot because in 8th grade, that's when we met, and we did not really like each other at all. Yeah, but then as stuff just shifted, sophomore year, we got super close. And it's just that we shared the same humor, same interests.
Circumstance.
And we had, and in spaces where we can both be energetic with each other. And
another part got cut here. Basically, we transitioned from talking about his dynamic with Sam to just scheduling and whatnot. And I bring up Myers-Briggs, so that's where we are here. This has been really annoying because the audio cuts out and it's unexpected when that happens. If that part wasn't cut out either, there's the P versus the J, the perceiving versus judging, which is basically are you a planner or somebody who goes spontaneously? So I get that that's a thing, but do you think that your introversion has something to do with that if we're not talking about Myers-Briggs?
I don't know. I don't have enough research to be able to make the claim that planning and scheduling has something to do with introversion. Really,
or
for
kind
me,
of opposite of that. Because you're introverted, it's you're more likely, or that's kind of why you're more like that.
The only link I can kind of make between those two is just to reduce stress and to be more mentally sound.
Okay.
And to plan out when to use my energy in the best cases. That's the only really thing I can link with that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure extroverts and introverts can both schedule a lot. And I'm sure even extroverts who have more social commitments would like to be able to schedule a lot better.
True. What happens if you don't plan?
If I don't plan, well, the only times I won't plan, because I do everything on a pattern. I always like to be down to the minute. But the times I feel like not planning are usually days where I have nothing to do.
Pause. Man, just when this recording wasn't tortured enough, the dogs start barking, and they bark for a long time, so I basically had to leave the room, and yeah, just not fun overall, so let's just skip ahead back to where we were. Alright, it looks like they're a bit settled now, so.
Alright.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, what was I saying? Wait, let me backtrack a little bit. I was talking about scheduling. Oh, what happens when I don't schedule? Okay.
Yes.
When I don't schedule, it's usually on a day where I truly have nothing to do. And it's also when I'm not feeling any energy. So what ends up happening is that I'll just stay there, sit in my bed or whatever, and just be on my phone and just feel like mush. It feels like I feel awful when I don't get up and do something. So if I don't plan, sometimes I can fall. Well, first off, obviously, if I don't plan, I can run into time crunches. Because sometimes I'll just want to do what I'm doing and not stop.
Yeah.
But if I keep doing that, I could run into some problems with the actual things I need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you somebody that has to, like, when it comes to getting things done that you need to do, are you like a homework guy before doing recreational things, or kind of like spread out?
I mix them.
Okay.
I during the day, because online school allows me to have a lot of breaks during the day to goof off and have fun.
Yeah.
So usually I'll take some time throughout the day, even when I'm doing homework, to just take breaks, get on my phone, play a game, or just call someone. So I usually mix them.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta attend your fourth bell Halo homework, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good times, good times.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to think of more questions because those are all the questions I've got. But anything you want to say about introversion or whatnot? Because there's probably a ton we didn't talk about.
Well, let's see.
Or like, what about other introverts that you know, like your friends?
My group is kind of mixed. I know Ham and Arjun are quite extroverted. Patrick is very introverted. Addie's somewhere in the middle. Addie's just Addie. But I would say I'm probably the most introverted of that group, and Ham's probably the most extroverted.
Well, I mean, not just like your group, but people you know. Like we kind of talked about on the show already, how you compare to extroverts, but like, what about other introverts? Because I know that when you've interviewed people for your paper, you kind of talked about the differences between them. You don't have to reference those people, but like, because I was one of them. But like, what about like some other people you know who are introverted? Like, how do they differ from you?
Well, let's see. I know that out of most introverts I know, I'm probably a lot more wanting to stay inside and not do a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
I know that when it, I would say when it comes to actually wanting to get out and explore town, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there probably are introverts who do that.
Yeah.
Because it's not like social, but just doing things outside.
Yeah. So I would say I probably don't want to do a whole lot of that stuff. I know definitely a bunch of even introverts I know a lot more do like getting out and doing stuff like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's really just a spectrum. I'm probably more on the farther end of introversion. But I'd say if you go too far, you start getting into crippling, like actually just harmful introversion.
Like just isolating and loneliness and
Yeah, and that's not good. But I think I balance it pretty well.
yeah. Man, I know this is probably different, but I remember in psych class we watched like a video of somebody who was like deathly afraid of spiders, and that was because of a fear. Or what's the word, like the phobia? Agoraphobia? Like
Yeah, I think agoraphobia.
not wanting to leave your house.
I think that's right.
Yeah, it was like something like that, and I don't think those people are necessarily introverts because of that, because they have a definite fear of something, but just kind of that idea where they're completely isolated in their house, not wanting to see anybody or do anything. I mean, they probably want to, but they're so afraid of like their fear, which in that case was spiders, that they wouldn't do it. And I know that's different, but it kind of reminds me of just like the complete far end of introverts who just like are super closeted and don't do anything because of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could also have that and probably have it be a good thing. Like on the flip side, what about like a monk? You know?
Yeah.
Like a religious monk whose whole like livelihood is just kind of being alone.
Yeah, it's probably also a mix of who's more emotionally sound and secure. You know, like
Yeah. I mean, that definitely plays a role, but I'm just saying that that's kind of like another aspect of the far end of the spectrum. Maybe it's not such a bad thing if you are all the way over there.
Yeah.
But then again, they might not be introverts. They just choose to live their life like that.
Well, yeah, when it comes to how it affects your own psyche and mental health, that's when it decides whether it starts to cross into mentally unsafe practices of introversion.
Yeah, because they're very spiritual and whatnot, so they probably don't need people in that sense. Yeah. Although I don't know, maybe they do have people, because I know there's like when I went to Greece a few years ago, like there was just a monastery in the mountains, where a bunch of nuns lived. So even though they're essentially like religious monks in a way, they're different than monks, but like like similar spiritual, quiet, praying. They live in a community at least.
Yeah.
Versus like the people you see in Avatar where they're just like sitting on the cliffside alone, wearing like nothing but a towel and just unleashing their chakras.
Yeah. So it's really just how you handle it as well. Not necessarily the extent of how much you are, but really how well you're able to work with it.
Yeah. So how would you... I don't know if I want to get into the advice territory because we're not experts, which is kind of the tagline of the show, but how do you think is like, or what do you think is an important thing for introverts to know, like improving their psyche, kind of like you said?
Just get experience with different people. Branch out. Know what is your core moral values. But don't break them, but still work to expand how much you interact.
Yeah, I would say that's a good line right there.
Yeah.
Just because that is kind of the weakness. It's like we don't really know how to talk to people. We don't really know how to put ourselves out there. Not that we necessarily want to, but it would be important to sometimes,
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, trying to think about the time right here because we started at like 1:03 p.m. but And it's now 2:05 p.m., but we had like an interruption for like probably 15 minutes.
We can probably go for, I 10. It was about a 10-minute break.
Yeah, but what is there? Do you have any like topics? Anything you want to add?
How about you talk about yourself and introversion? How do you handle this kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, I explained at the beginning kind of how I have these waves and such, but I guess I can go into that. I'll go into the waves. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll go into like the weeks where I am extroverted probably in the next episode with that topic, but for now I'll talk about like when I am feeling kind of introverted. It's kind of weird and it differs because sometimes it's like I want to play a game with my good friend, you know, like I want to just sit down and play a game. So that of itself is social. But other times it's just like I don't want to talk to anybody. Like I'm done, dude. Like I want to watch my show, eat my food, play my games, and just kind of like chill out, I guess. I also kind of like quote unquote researching, I guess. Basically just my way of saying I like to try to read books that are kind of like self-help kind of types, like How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, because they challenge me in that way that you mentioned, kind of like putting yourself out there, like talking to more people. And that's like a book that helps me get there. And also just thinking about life in general. Like I picked up a Carl Jung book called The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, which just talks about like theories of the mind and whatnot. When I get into these introverted moods, I feel very like internally sound, I guess, like just more one with myself. And I'm really passionate about learning when I get like that. Like in my extroverted moods, it's usually like I want to create something or do something that involves a lot of people. And that's kind of how this podcast came to be, because I was like, I want to do this to kind of give something that people would watch while making it fun, while also making it insightful or whatnot. But in my introverted moods, it's more about the internal, like myself and becoming a better person, which also kind of fuels into that idea. So in a way, this podcast is kind of the mix of both, the equilibrium, if you will, like you said earlier. Any thoughts?
No, that's a good point. I know you and I have very, very different patterns of introversion, where I would say you honestly blend the line more with pseudo extrovert, pseudo introvert, more in the middle. So yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. Do you kind of feel that like internal soundness?
Definitely. I'm very comfortable with how I've handled some stuff like this with introversion, or not even handled, but just the way I've structured my life around it. I think I've done a good job.
Yeah, and I feel like Oh, you go. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. The only thing that I wish I was a little better at, I just need more practice. Talking to strangers and breaking out of my comfort zone a little more.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I would say, I don't know if you agree, but like our strengths as an introvert is just like we take a lot of time for ourselves, so we're very reflective and introspective in that sense. Like we know who we are, we know what we need, and our limitations and whatnot. Just very honest and reflective, because it's part of our livelihood to take time for ourselves. So you just kind of think that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm usually more openly introspective, but I mean, just take you for an example. Like you sound very collected, and I know you are like pretty collected. And the way to become collected is just like knowing who you are, your limitations, your introspection, like what I just said, you know?
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I do. And it's not to say that extroverts probably also don't feel that soundness, because I'm sure a lot of people are on the opposite side, are very, very comfortable with how they handle their stuff as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think really introverts and extroverts, the only thing that is different between them really is just how you feel around other people. Because I'm sure they all have the same patterns, like with extroverts and introverts. Both some feel very comfortable with how they did it, some feel very uncomfortable. Some need more practice, some want to keep doing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so different between us and them. Really, it's just the title and are just our energy levels. That's about it.
But what if it is? Because this was just a thought I had. Like, introversions or introverts have that like self-reflecting introspection. And that's how we know ourselves. And you were saying, like, I bet extroverts have that similar thing. But what if it's similar, because we obviously know extroverts who are collected, but what if they become collected for other reasons? And that would make sense. What if it's more confidence based?
It could, yeah, definitely. I think that might be.
That sounds like it makes sense.
Yeah, ask on Ham next time. He could probably have more thought on that. I specifically can't speak for that, but I think that there's definitely a point to be made there as well.
Yeah, well, just because it's all about like having all of this energy, and they don't really reflect as much as a result. I mean, some do, and some like obviously like, think about their lives when they hit a rough point or even at a good point. Like, we're all the same on that regard, but I wonder if they feel more at home with a confidence kind of feeling. Like, we don't need confidence as much as we need self-reflection, but they don't need self-reflection as long as they have confidence, you know?
Yeah.
But like, that's just my opinion. I'm not really sure. It's just kind of interesting dialogue to think about.
Yeah, I think we need to talk to more people about that.
Yeah, but maybe there's something there.
Yeah.
So I guess we're probably there to the point where we can end this off. So, any last thoughts or whatnot, James?
Yeah. My only thought is, don't treat it like it's something that you have to grapple with or deal with. It really is just. It is what it is. It's a lot easier than you think it is to just act.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're just people.
Yeah.
Nothing to it.
And really, it's just a label for how you interact, you know?
Yeah. It's a good thought to leave us with.
Awesome.
So anyway, this has been episode 2 of Culmination, all about introversion. And thanks for coming on, James.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, any thought for the class, just like in general?
For the class?
Yeah, just like something funny.
Just get to know your people better.
That's not funny, James. I said funny. You already said you're in. And there's nothing funnier than an audio cut. We'll see you guys next time.